Video on. I'm sorry, I'm not using like
Mhm.
Apple grade technology, so it's probably very Androidy quality, very pixelated, but these are the times. Um, just want to welcome everyone who has joined us thus far. I did explain to a few people that um, I've muted guests because I don't want to hear from you. It's just we don't want any random background noises that accidentally happen throughout so that this flows nicely. So today's interview, well, this interview now, is about head mentors, and we are going to be hearing from Natasha Ngwenya, who is a third year medical student at Tigerberg and the head mentor of Huis Francie for this year. And we're also going to be hearing from Tarien, who is a third year food science student at Stellies as well, who is the head mentor of Aurora. I am super excited to hear the wisdom that's about to get dropped by the ladies. Um, but yeah, we're just going to jump into it. Question, Taryn and Natasha, do you want to put your videos on?
Yeah.
Sure.
Ooh, hi. Wow, now it actually like feels like
Hello.
a TV interview, like the NCA. Ah, wow, I'm a mess. I know I am. Okay, awesome. So just for everyone who has tuned in case you don't know what head mentor is, maybe you just saw the pretty poster. I know it was pretty. And you just clicked the link and you stepped into the interview. Now you're like, what is actually happening? So every res and PSO at Stellenbosch University should have a mentorship program. And that is just passionate students within that environment and community who stand for the role of mentorship. If you have been in first year, you will have had a mentor, I hope, and a great mentor at that. It's usually a group of about, it can range depending on the number of residents or, yeah, residents. So I know in Francie, I think we had like 18 at some point, but it could honestly vary from 10 to 20 to more than 20. And that team of mentors have a group of mentees, usually 6, 5 mentees who are in first year, and they just help with giving advice and helping first year students, newcomers, with adjusting to university life at Stellenbosch. And that team of fantastic people is led by a fantastic individual in each of the residences and PSOs. And that individual is then given the title of being head mentor. And that is what we are going to be breaking down in this interview is the role of head mentor specifically, whose responsibility is taking care of that magnificent team of people and also being a mentor themselves. Some head mentors are mentors, I know that as well. But more the role of head mentor as the leader of the team of mentors. Amazing. I hope I broke it down properly. Natasha, Taryn, it's been a while since I've been in the role, but think, think I know what it was about. Okay, so I'm just going to jump into the questions. I think a question for me before I applied that was definitely in my head was, okay, it's awesome. So I see Taryn, I see Natasha, they're doing great, they're head mentor. How did they even get there? Like, what do I do? Prums go through caucus, but I don't actually know. I don't know how to actually apply to become. So, what is, I know it also varies from what are the words from resident or residence or PSO to PSO. But what is the application process, or at least what was it like for the two of you in your communities? And can you just break that down for someone who is actually really wondering what that process is like and what they actually need to do to apply for the role? I don't know. Let's start with Natasha because your video's like big here.
Okay. Okay, so for us, how it works in Francie is it starts with a application form. So everyone, the whole race is emailed an application form, and in that you have to sign, or not sign, but write a motivation letter. So that basically entails why you want to be head mentor, what your vision would be if you were to be elected as head mentor. And then so it's that, and then it's a CV as well. That just relates to everything that you've done in uni.
Mm-hmm.
And then the declaration form. So everyone has to fill that in. And then after that, it's a interview. So everyone fills in the application form and goes to the interview.
Yeah.
And now the interview consists of a panel of incoming and outgoing leadership. And then from there, head mentor is chosen.
Hey, as you made it through all of that. And I think a really important thing to note is that you mentioned the CV. And I know in Francie specifically, the CV is speaking specifically to your time in university. And I know a lot of students, they bend over backwards times 3,000 getting a CV from when they were born to the moment that they are applying. Like some people literally come and scribble in pencil what they just did 5 seconds ago just to make sure that CV is thick. So I don't know, Tarien, maybe it's different in Aurora. We'll hear from you just now, but I know in Francie, at least, when they say a CV and they want your university experience, it's not about having the thickest CV. It's about having the most relevant content in there, because it does cost you as well to just throw in everything, throw in your marks you got for natural science. Like, lovely, but really. Okay, awesome. Thank you. And Tarien, how is it over in Aurora?
So I think, like you said, it does differ a lot from community to community. As far as I can remember, I have a very bad memory, but if I remember correctly, we had so our applications in the last election term, they opened up. You had to fill in an application form. Basically, a lot of the questions were along the lines of, what vision do you see for the PSO? What are some of the things you'd like to contribute? What are some of the things you've actually taken part of within the PSO? Like how have you been involved and such? And then, so it's an application form that you fill out with various questions and motivation. And then that's in general, if I remember correctly, that was in general for a hawker position. And then I think you indicated as well whether or not you would like to be a head mentor. And then we have a caucus. So we also have I think it's called an election committee. I think the prim and vice prim serve on it. So it constitutes hawker members of that term, and then our PSO coordinator. And at the caucus, so they go through all of the applications, make sure that your leadership CMS is in place, and that you can go through to the next round. At the caucus itself, you deliver a 2-minute speech about just giving your motivation to an audience of about, the quorum is 30 members of the House. So yeah, we have to have quorum in order to have the election be valid. You give your speech and the floor opens for people from the House to ask you questions, or for the election committee to ask you questions. And then we do a voting. So it's usually like prim, vice prim votes, and then head mentor votes, and then the rest of the hawker. And yeah, that's about it. So we vote on the evening, or on the caucus evening. I think this year it's a bit different because we'll be doing the same idea just on Microsoft Teams and on 2 rounds.
Digital.
So we're doing it in
so with that process then, when you apply for, okay, so essentially at Aurora you're on hawker as well if you're a head mentor, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yes, it used to be a mentor hawker.
Okay, awesome. And then if you make hawker, does that automatically mean because you ticked head mentor, you've now become head mentor, or did you then get the choice to choose, like, could you then go, actually, I just want to be hawker and not head mentor?
So when you fill in your application form, you usually indicate that you also want to apply for either prim, vice prim, or head mentor. That's how it works for us. I think some communities have more like you apply for a position.
Yeah.
I've heard of the communities where you apply for example, the environmental portfolio or the social impact portfolio. So for us, it's just you indicate whether or not you'd like to apply for those three, like more distinct, not distinct in the sense that it's more important, but like identifiable roles. And then at the caucus itself, we vote for those three roles, and then we continue to vote for the rest of the House committee.
Okay, so if you and I were in Aurora and we were both running for head mentor, by the end of that caucus, one of us would know that we definitely didn't make it for head mentor, but I could still run for ARCA.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so our constitution also sets it out like that. So that's why the prim, vice prim, and head mentor votes are first, so that if you don't make either of those that you applied for, you can still stand for HARCA.
Yeah. That's wild how different it is. Just with two people.
It is.
So different. I'm literally like, whoa. Okay, well then that's epic though, because I think that's actually needed for people to understand the scope of how different it is in each community. And then I know once people hear interview, Natasha, because I know when I heard interview in Francie, I almost had a heart attack. And then Tarien, when people hear a caucus, minds and stress levels just, I know, we're all human and it is stressful to think of going through questions from human beings. How would you say that process itself is in terms of the interview and the caucus? And do you have any advice on how to be best prepared for the interview or the caucus? Tarien, I'll start with you because I started with Natasha.
So I know I'm usually like I'm more on the introverted side. So I used to do public speaking in high school. So I've practiced in front of audiences, but it's not I have to practice type of thing. I have a speech. I go through it a few times, so I'm more comfortable with the speech, so I don't stutter and get anxious. So that was it's a really simple for us. It, like I said, it differs from community, but I think it's a really like simple thing actually when you break it down, because it's just they just want to talk to you. They just want to see what's your vision, what are your plans, how are you going to like approach the role, how are you going to use it beneficially to build upon the foundation of your community that the previous terms have built upon. So I think in that sense, just reminding yourself of that is such a big like step towards a good caucus. So for my personal experience, I wrote down my speech. I went through it a few times on my own just to make sure that I have like the basics in my head. And then I also read it to my family members and like my loved ones and friends a few times, just to be comfortable in front of people. And then at the caucus itself, I just reminded myself like, this is my community. These are my people. These are my family. You know, I don't have to be nervous. They're all rooting for you in some sense. They don't want you to fail, because standing for HARCA, I think a lot of people think it comes like really, competitive, but it's not that case. Like if I didn't make head mentor, the people standing with me would have been just as great in the position. So just constantly reminding yourself of that, learning your speech, and just taking a breath. That's about the best advice that I from a personal standpoint can give.
Nice. That's amazing advice. Where were you before my caucus? This is what I needed to hear. No, it really is true. I think people either fall into the trap of being afraid to practice their speech and prepare because they don't want to seem over prepared in the moment, but there's really nothing wrong with being prepared and thinking of the questions that you might get and knowing how you plan on answering them. It's not like you're plagiarizing someone else's answers. It's your speech, it's your answers. You don't want to get there and then, because when you're in front of a crowd, sometimes you just hear words differently, or maybe that's just me. Like hey, English is just not the same in front of a crowd. So it's like, okay, they said something about mission, and then I don't know what came after that. But if you're prepared for, if they want to know my mission, I'm ready. It takes a lot of stress down. So don't step into caucus unprepared, just because you want to seem. Yeah.
One more thing I can add is making sure you know what your community's values, mission, vision, and what the Constitution says. That's that has caught a few people.
Yeah. Very, very good. Yeah. I won't lie. I will confess. I've been part of a few caucuses and interviews, like not being on the other side of the panel myself. Hey, my mom just like crashed the interview. Amazing. Being on the actual interviewer side, like now, and I just love asking the values. I love it because it's one of those things. It's either you know it or you don't, and you can't fake your way out of it. You have to know them. Really good advice. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tarien. And Natasha, drop some wise bars for us on preparing. Oh, you're muted. Classic.
Okay, there you go. So I agree that there are a few similarities between caucus and interviewing. Obviously, interviewing is very different to caucus because it's not like a speech per se. It's more you sitting there and they're asking you questions. But I think just also realizing that it is, like what Tarien was saying, it is a conversation. Like, don't put so much pressure onto yourself. You know, they're just there to get to know you, get to know who you are, get to know what your values are, what you want for the mentor system as a whole, if you were to be head mentor. So I would say, you know, just go in there open-minded and be honest. I know it's cliche and everyone says it, but honestly, they want to hear from you. They want to hear, you know, your own thoughts. So just go in there and be honest. And I would say how to prepare. Definitely know your values, yes, 100%. And also maybe talk to the current head mentor, talk to a few mentors, just to get a feel of, you know, what is this mentoring all about? What is head mentoring all about? Obviously, you don't have to know everything, you know, about mentoring and, you know, the ins and outs of mentoring, but it's a good idea just to have a rough idea of what mentoring is about. And maybe just to give a few tips on our side for interviewing. I know that in my interview, they like to ask a lot of like situation type questions. So sort of think about, you know,
I laugh because I was there.
I remember the questions, Mama.
Yeah.
So think about, you know, put yourself in the shoes of a head mentor. Think about some situations that might come up, and really just keep in touch with current affairs. Make sure you know, have a rough idea of what's going on, things that affect your, you know, university or campus. Just keep up with that, and I think you'll be fine. Yeah.
Epic. Thank you very much. I'm literally, if you see me writing, I'm taking notes here because I'm learning. I'm like, oh wow, actually, maybe I should just do this for myself. Just have a lecture series. But you both touched on it a bit now, and I just wonder if you want to add any specifics under this question that I'm about to ask, and that is there anything specific that you actually recommend someone know before stepping into the role? I ask this because I know a lot of the time people second guess applying because in the back of their head, they're like, maybe I can't define capitalism. I'm not going to survive caucus. Or, oh my gosh, I don't really know what happened last year when there was that incident at XYZ. Like, should I know all the details about that before I apply? Like, what information do you think someone should definitely know stepping in? And what are some things that you don't really, you know, before you apply, what was going through your mind, just thinking of, do I actually know who runs this university? Okay, and then who's under that? Okay, and then who's under that? Okay, then who's under that? Do I know all of the referral systems? Questions like that pop in your head that actually make you second guess last minute. So are there any specific things that from your experience you're like, okay, definitely know this before stepping in? The rest you can kind of just figure it out as you go, or no one is going to try and kill you for not knowing it on the day of the interview or caucus. Natasha, you can take it away.
Okay, so I think I did touch on them, in the previous question.
Yeah.
But I think even before the whole application process, the most important thing for you to do would be to just actually find out what is a head mentor, like what does it entail? What, if I was to get this position, would I enjoy it? Is it something for me? I think that's really important, because even if you don't know the ins and outs, the fact that you're passionate about what it means to be a head mentor is enough sometimes to get you through.
Yeah.
So I think before the application, just figure out, is this something I want to do? Am I passionate about this? So yeah, and then, yeah, like I said, current affairs, just finding out a bit more about your res, speak to the previous head mentor, speak to the mentors, and yeah, that's my advice.
Great. Thank you. Tarien, anything you'd like to add? You're muted. I love this because it makes me think of that. I don't know if you guys have seen that ad on TV where the lady's like, unmute Mario, or whatever the name is. I don't know. But it really makes me think of that.
Yeah. I think very similar to Natasha, like just know what the role is about, know what you're getting. It's not getting yourself into, it's not that bad, but just know what your responsibilities are going to be. Like what are you going to have to do as a head mentor? What are the things that you can bring to the table that you didn't previously, that weren't present in the previous term?
Yeah.
And also, like I said, go through the constitution of your community. It should be available. If it's not on your social media platforms or such, you can like DM the Instagram people. They will find it for you.
Yeah.
The reason I mentioned that is a lot of the like nitty-gritty details that how the election works, what the role of the haka is, what the role of the prim, the vice prim, the PSO coordinator in our situation. It's a lot of it is detailed in that document, and it's a really nice framework to have if you are a member of the House Committee, because you need to know what your community has decided upon as the network or the structure, and you need to like either abide by that, or if you feel that something should be changed for the beneficial, you need to be able to reference that framework. But apart from that, it's just like most of the things, at least know who your res head is or your PSO coordinator. At least know what the prim and the vice prim is. Just have a general idea of how your community, what the network is, and that you can find out very easily. If you don't know people within the leadership structure of this year, then you can always query on the WhatsApp group that most people are on, or social media, and just the views and the values and the missions and the visions. Those are always beneficial to make sure that not that your vision and mission is aligned, but that you feel the same way that the community feel, and you have the same values, or you agree with the values in a sense.
Thank you. Gold. Mic drop. Always. Both of you are on fire. Honestly, this is ridiculous. I really love that, because I have been in so many interviews and caucuses where I see a really strong candidate, and you can see like their speech is great, they're answering some questions really great, and then there comes that really basic question like, who is the res head? And they don't know, and you just see their confidence go right down to zero, and you just feel the crowd is like, really, you're going to know everything about South Africa, but you're not going to know our res head. How? So you really don't want to shoot yourself in the foot being a really strong candidate and then not knowing the basics of your actual community. So really good advice there from both of you. Really, really good to dig in your constitution. The constitution is your friend. Your res or PSO constitution is your friend. Or at least read like the contents page or something. Like, I remember something in the constitution. So I survived. And now I think we are heading in the direction of speaking about the responsibility of a head mentor, and now you've applied, you've gone through interviews and caucus, and you've made it through to the other side. I think a lot of people are wondering what being a head mentor actually does to your schedule. Like, what does it look like in the week or the month of a head mentor? And what effect does it have on your academics? Because I think that's a huge thing that weighs on your mind before you apply for anything beyond your degree, because you're like, I'm here to study and hopefully pass at some point. So why would I add more to my plate when it's already hard enough to get that 50? So just how does it look for your schedule? What does it actually do to your schedule? Obviously now I'm not expecting you to share how I went from 100% to 40% average. No, just what did you have to adapt in terms of how you study and your academic schedule as well, and just the schedule of a head mentor. What should you typically expect to be part of your schedule? Tarien, you can just take it from there.
So I think the most intense part for me thus far as a head mentor for my community was the end of the second semester, when you are elected to the position, where all of the welcoming, so we have to do mentor application forms, you have to send those out, you have to sift through them, it's YEMAs being sorted out and interviews being taking place. And then we also like to work together with the welcoming leader to set up the welcoming program and the mentor sessions. So that is quite intense, because it's also like the second semester is, I found it quite difficult last year. So you have to balance the meetings with your academics. And then the beginning of the year welcoming week, that's the most intense it got. But it's nice because you don't have academics then.
Yeah.
Well, most people don't.
On your campus.
Yeah. I know a lot of people have like postgrad or summer school.
Yeah.
So it's But I think in general, if you make the time, I once read this quote: "You have time what you make time for." If you make the time for it, you will be able to do it. Like I maintained, like I don't do great at academics, but I maintained my my current mark grade. So if you allow it to become too heavy a burden, it is going to become too heavy a burden. But if you prioritize, don't. That's the other thing, prioritizing. I've had situations where I told my leadership team, listen, I can't get this to you today. I can't get it to you by the deadline I gave you. I'm really sorry, but I have to do this report first. And they understand. They're going through the same thing. Then they're there to support you. They're there to help if you need help with anything. So just prioritize and don't allow your academics to become more of a stress than it is already.
Sure. Fire. You have what is it? You have time that you make time for. You have the time that you make time for.
You have time for what you make time for.
Yeah.
So.
Getting a tattoo ASAP of that. That is actual fire. It's so true, because I know in my first year, I don't know who I thought I was. Someone asked me, I can't remember what he asked me. It was probably something silly like, do I still read books? Because I'd said that I love reading books, and he'd said, do you still read books? And I was like, no, I don't have time to read books. I'm in university now. And he's like, oh wow, girl. Once you start saying you don't have time, you will not have time. So if you start that pattern of thinking and that space of I only have time for my degree, that is honestly what you are only going to have time for. But once you open up your mind and you go, okay, this is the time I have for my degree, this is the time I have for XYZ, this is the time I have for social, and this is the time I have to sleep, because sleep is a thing. You're for some kids, not me. But it really is gold to prioritize, because I think a lot of people think it's easier to not have to prioritize by having an emptier plate, but you're not actually living your fullest life and the most fulfilled life if you just want an empty plate so that you don't have to make tough calls on what you need to do at what time. So sometimes it's not about having the emptiest plate and focusing on one thing. You can focus on 20 things if that is your gift, and actually still do them all pretty well if you have time for the things which you make time for. I'm gonna get it. I think you need to like type that in the chat, because no one must leave this not remembering that quote. Okay, awesome. Natasha, please add. I know you have some gold there.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, just I can add to what Tarien was saying. I think also just, there's a lot of similarities to what she was saying. The busiest time is planning for welcoming and welcoming itself. The difference between our campus and your guys' campus is that we have started with academics by the time welcoming comes in. And I think, unfortunately, I learned it the hard way. So I underestimated how much work, we had, and how much work welcoming week was as well. So I think I can say that, prioritizing is number one, especially for us, just to sit down and realize you don't have to do everything as a head mentor. Do what you need to do, but you don't always have to go the extra mile. If you can, if you have time for that, 100% go for it. But I think for me, I just wanted to be everywhere and do everything and be seen, But it did affect my academics at the end of the day. So definitely prioritize, sit down and know yourself and know your limits, and realize, you know what, I need to spend 2 hours doing this, and then I need to, focus on my academics. So I think just realizing, know yourself, set boundaries for yourself as well. And, one of the most important things is when things get crazy and intense and busy, make time for yourself, because at the end of the day, if you are going to overwork yourself with different things, it's going to affect your work academically, it will affect your head mentor work as well. So make time for yourself, just take an hour off. Self-care, most important thing, and that will help with all the other areas as well. So that's what I would say.
So good. Self-care is so underrated in leadership, because I think a lot of people have that mindset of, I didn't beg you to run for the role, you decided, so now you must be able to handle everything life throws at you. So it is so important to take ownership of your self-care when you stand for any leadership position, because a lot of the time you are the only person who is going to take ownership of it and actually checking in on yourself. That is super, super good. Yeah, I know with Tygerberg Welcoming Week, it's always, when you survive Welcoming Week, it's like, yeah, we made it.
We made it.
We're ready now. We're ready. I remember when I was from many moons ago, I had to, I think the day of, what do they call it now? What do they call Fensters? Oh my gosh.
Connect.
It's so fancy.
Connect. Yeah, connect. The day of it, I was writing an end of block test, which is like the last test of my module. If I'd failed that test, I would have failed my module. So obviously it meant building up to Fensters, connect. I was studying somewhere in between those rehearsals. So Tygerberg, it is possible though. It is doable.
Yes, definitely.
Prioritize. Miss a dance lesson or two. Just do what you got to do to get your A, please. Or your B or C. I mean, I'm not judging. Geez, who am I? Chucking out A's. Yeah, and I think something that you both mentioned, which is really important, is starting something is always going to be harder than kind of relying on the momentum of it. So it is a bit overwhelming when you've just been elected, and it's that time where everyone is congratulating you and yay, but also everyone is handing stuff over to you and they're like, we're done, we're getting out, please step in, do your thing. So that is always that part where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if do I belong here? Is this the right decision? That's always the moment where you're like, actually, I'm not sure if I did the right thing here, but by then it's kind of too late because you're in. But just ride that out, because that's not how your term will be throughout. It's just starting something generally in life is just always harder than when you're actually riding on the momentum of what you started. It's like dieting and exercise the day I start those. And I think something that a lot of students might be wondering about the role is now you're in it and you have gotten through that, how your schedule looks and how to navigate the role. How much influence does a head mentor actually have in their team, in the life of newcomers, in their rest space in the university? Just what have you found that you were able to influence? What do you, where do you feel that you had the most impact? Someone coming into the role, what can they be looking forward to really reaching? Which element of varsity life for someone? Don't even know who's starting. Natasha, take it away.
Okay, so I might be a bit biased here, but I think if I was to say a leadership role that probably has the most impact, I would say head mentor. But let me just explain.
No bias at all.
So, I mean, if you think about the role of a head mentor, we have such a huge, we play such a huge role in the entrance of newcomers into university. And I think if anywhere to make a change or to make an impact, that is the place to make an impact. I just want to go back to last year, just remembering the interviews that we did. A lot of the mentors that applied, they always went back to the fact that they're applying because of the mentors that they had. So just to think that, you know, through their head mentor, influencing the mentor group as a whole, now that has, you know, infiltrated into the newcomers are wanting to step into leadership. So I think definitely head mentor is one of the best places to make an impact and to make a change. You know, if just to think about the newcomers entrance is into a whole new environment. This whole jump from high school to university, it's such a huge jump. And, you know, they're approaching a space that they've never been in, you know, being with people that they've never interacted with. And we have a role to play in that. And it's so rewarding to actually see and notice that what we've planned and what we've had meetings about and what we've spoken about is actually coming into fruition and helping the newcomers. So definitely I would say that it's not, it's worthwhile for sure. It's not a waste of time to be head mentor. You really do have an impact in other people's lives.
Wow, amazing. Getting emotional just thinking about the influence my own mentor had. Like, if I didn't have a mentor, I probably would have just definitely would not be doing this now. So good, so good, and so true. Tarien, would you like to add?
Yeah, I think it's very much the same as what Natasha said. We've had, I remember doing mentor interviews last.
Sorry, you're frozen on my, I don't know if it's my network that is being a problem. Let me just see quickly. Oh, wow. Awesome.